Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to talk about the new Roadhouse remake, and Nick will be unable to participate because I ripped out his throat right before we press record. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's another episode of Two Peas on a Podcast. Gerald is here with you, and over on the other side is the weird dude that walks around with a giant smile on his face looking to fight everybody he comes in contact with. Also, me. That's Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake and Nick, how are you guys?
So welcome to Gerald's house.
Yeah.
Audio audience, you're missing out. This is why you got to tune into the videos over on YouTube. Gerald is apparently, they've already picked up the sequel to Roadhouse. It's going to be called Gerald's House, and Gerald is going to star as, I don't know, a broke down looking Jake Gyllenhaal. Look, it's Gerald with hair.
Yeah,
That's worth the price of admission right there. So
I'm glad you didn't pan that photo up like from the waist up on Gyllenhaal there. Ooh. Because I'm already kind of feeling some envy. So
okay.
He was freaking ripped in this movie, bro. I think I was gay while I was watching this. Well, I guess we'll get there.
Just during this movie, okay.
Just during this, yeah. With the credits rolled, I went back to normal.
Okay.
How are you, man? How's everything going? You good?
I'm sleepy.
Yeah.
I went to see Ghostbusters Frozen Empire Thursday last week. So I'm already all ready for next week's recording. And
hold your thoughts there. I don't want to.
I don't know. Like I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm just busy. I'm tired. Trying to work on live stream stuff. Trying to get stuff for live stream for The Cure all ready and rip roaring to go. We've got live stream starting May 29th to raise money for the Research Institute. Gonna be a good time. But we're here to talk about Roadhouse.
Yeah. The main review this week is the new Roadhouse, which dropped on Amazon Prime over the weekend. There was a bit of controversy around it with director Doug Liman because he was going to sue Amazon for not giving a theatrical release. Apparently, he was promised that when he signed on to do the movie. It didn't get a theatrical, and he didn't sue them. So I guess it was all just talk. But we'll talk about Doug Liman and his films, and this film specifically when we get there. Nick, let's see what you may or may not care about this week in the entertainment world in our new segment as we spill the peas here.
Oh no, not the peas! Not the peas! Ah! Ah!
God, I love that.
I'm so proud of that.
God, I love that.
I should replace all of our sound drops with just me doing different random movie quotes and stuff.
Just you screaming at whatever the thing
exactly.
Is. As Nicolas Cage from whatever movie you choose. So I want to start with one that might spark a lengthy conversation. I mean, I don't know, but it's definitely the most it's kind of the most like controversial thing that's going on right now. And I don't know if you heard about this specifically, but obviously, let me read the headline to you and then and then we'll kind of go from there.
This isn't about another dude in Michigan, is it? Because I when did you get back, by the way? Like when did you finally get home?
My flight got delayed.
No, okay.
I had to rent a car from Detroit and drive in, but I got back a couple days ago. Here's the headline: Late Night with the Devil, which, by the way, you may or may not know is a new independent horror movie. Late Night with the Devil directors and their star respond to criticism over the film's use of AI. Okay, now let me explain to you, because I actually did my own review of this movie on my YouTube channel, and I talked a little bit about the AI quote unquote controversy. So this is a movie, an independent horror movie, very, very low budget, set in 1979, I believe, 78 or 79. And it's like a Johnny Carson-esque talk show set in the 70s. And I don't know if you recall, but like back in the day when old TV shows would come back from commercial, they would have like, welcome back. And it would just be like a still image on the screen with like novelty shots or whatever. So there were a couple of those still images that were created with AI and used in this movie. So that's generally what happened. Obviously, coming off of the SAG-AFTRA strikes and ending that kind of those negotiations, one of the big things in there was that there was not going to be artificial intelligence used in Hollywood productions for the likeness of people and so on and so forth. Well, there's a couple caveats of the story. The movie was filmed in 2021. So when they did this and when they used AI to create these images, it was arguably 3 years ago, roughly. So that's with just those facts there in front of you. What do you think about these low budget horror directors and producers using AI in that way? Or even more of a larger discussion, how do you feel about it in general?
Pay artists for art.
Yeah.
The end. Just pay artists for art. It's not hard. It's not a complicated thing. Hire artists, pay them for their artwork. Even if you're a low budge movie, even if you're a no budge movie, you can find somebody that can slap together. Like if you want to have a still title card, for a transition out of a scene or something like that, yeah, pay artists because, I mean, listen, like how many different, just I mean, is a broader kind of thing in terms of like the world at large, like I mean, we're entering a landscape in which, I mean, and granted, it's been going on my whole lifetime. It's been going on your whole lifetime about things like automation taking away people's jobs, about all those kind of different things. So, I mean, I'm very much of a mind of, just what like create like why not hire artists? Why not
Hmm.
hire artists to do that kind of stuff? Why? I mean, like, granted, AI is a tool like any other tool,
Hmm.
and I guess it probably depends more so on how you use it than not. I don't necessarily know that,
Hmm.
or not or anything like that. But I mean, just pay artists, like have like hire artists. Like, I mean, think about it. Like, if we want to qualify Roadhouse as art, that's probably a different discussion for later in the episode.
What? I don't
But
know if I like your. I'm not 100% in love with your
but
tone when you
but
said
like
that.
but like like imagine if, like, there was just a robot directed it, or
Hmm.
they just had an AI likeness of Jake Gyllenhaal standing in the
Hmm.
movie, like it wasn't really Jake Gyllenhaal. So I mean, where does that kind of thing stop? Now, I'm not saying this is like we're all going to be replaced by digital versions of whatever kind of thing, but I mean, I firmly believe that, because I pretend, at least at some points in my life, that I create art through writing, through podcasting, through video making, through whatever other type of content.
Hmm.
That's I I don't even know where I'm going with that, but I fancy myself a creator and
Sure.
borderline an artiste in some form or fashion, and
Well,
I
I
I
agree. Go
I don't
ahead.
know. I don't know.
Oh,
This is the worst segment we've ever done because it's just me
no.
stammering through a response.
Well, I agree with you. I think that it's a shame that they use the AI images as opposed to hiring, a graphic designer or an independent artist. I mean, because these are on screen for like 2 or 3 seconds. I mean, you could have paid somebody probably like a couple $100 to do something like that. It would have been a dream come true for them. But I want to ask you on a larger point because I agree with everything that you said. I wish they had not used AI in this. However, being it is what it is, and they did do that, and they were experimenting with it, is how the director phrased it. Because this was a new thing, kind of when it started, and it wasn't as kind of feared as it is now, and
Well, there
hated by
was
the
no
community as it
discourse
is now.
about it. Yeah, there was no
Right, right, right.
discourse about it like there is now.
So they were kind of experimenting with it before it was taboo. So that's one thing. But do you think those still images being used for a few seconds is reason for anyone to boycott this movie as a larger extension of what we just talked about?
I don't care. Watch
Hmm.
the movie. Don't watch the movie. Like, did they use it? Like, yeah, it's like you said. This was before all of this hullabaloo came up over this kind of thing, and they were experimenting for it. It's not something I would ever endorse anyone using. It's something, obviously, just even in our conversation here, I'm condemning the idea of it.
Yeah,
Don't use it. Use like, because it's not, because AI is sourcing that, like, all that artwork and that image work from somewhere. So it's taking work from actual artists
sure.
and warping it and transmogrifying it in a way to then create like AI versions of images that they need for whatever scene transition they're trying to utilize or whatever. So it's not, they're taking that from somewhere. That's not just being generated out of whatever.
Right.
You're feeding a ton of Picasso paintings into an AI program, and it's generating out
Give me a Picasso like thing
yeah,
or whatever. Yeah,
it's
sure, I
generating a
get.
Picasso mock-up or something like that. So don't use it, don't endorse it, don't do anything. But at the same time, there also probably a lot of, and granted, I haven't seen it. It's a low-budget horror movie, so I probably never will. But there's a lot of things in that movie, I'm sure, that are artists working really,
Oh
really
yeah.
hard in
Hmm.
order to create great art in the sense of movie making. So do
Right.
you condemn the entire production just because of a few still images? There's still a lot of people that worked really, really hard on the movie that I'm sure would love to have their work seen by as many people as possible. Here's the
Right.
other thing too. I'm sure this AI controversy has probably put more eyes on this than it ever would have. I'm sure
Yeah,
more
that's the
people have
irony. Yeah.
have seen this movie now, like because no any press is good press kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
I
it
mean, you and
probably
I
already
are
had that effect regardless, but I wouldn't say to boycott it
no.
necessarily, but you can certainly condemn the usage of it, and you can certainly not endorse these filmmakers or any filmmakers or anyone utilizing these tools going forward, because
Yeah.
it robs you. Like, I think the point I was trying to make earlier, that I was stammering and stumbling across and spitting all over my face and everything, it robs you of that creative process. It robs me of that creative process. I could feed a whole bunch of script prompts into an AI program, or I could feed a whole bunch of idea prompts into an AI program, and it could spit a whole bunch of stuff out at me really quickly, but it robs me of the creativity of it. I think one
Right.
of the things that's most rewarding about the creation of art is that act in and of itself, the act of creation. When I write something, for instance, when I work on my novel or whatever, I'm creating something that is wholly and uniquely mine, born out of my ideas, developed over a lifetime in a lot of ways. Like, there's so much value in that. Maybe not to anybody else, but to me, there's a ton of it, and I would wager that for a lot of people, it's the same kind of thing. I don't care about a boycott. Boycotts are meaninglessly pointless. Like,
Like you said,
stop
it
it.
brings more people to it at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
like don't boycott it. I'm sure that there's still a lot of good things about it, but you can also
yeah.
condemn the usage of AI in it.
Right. I mean, that's kind of where I'm. You and I are in lockstep. I mean, I hate that they used it. I don't think that it should have made it past the cutting room floor. I don't think they should have used it in the final production. But just because they did, I'm not going to boycott a movie that hundreds of people worked on that I think is a great film. I think that something, like you said, something could be said for this controversy preventing things like this going forward. But I also think the regulations need to be in place to allow that to happen. I mean, Hollywood needs to know what its boundaries are because,
I mean, and that was a big part of what the strike was all
yeah,
about, right? Was kind
yep,
of defining those parameters.
it was. And unfortunately, there was nothing like still image transitions mentioned in that agreement. It was all about, actors' likenesses and voices and extras being like simulated and used after the first day and like all that kind of stuff, which is obviously super important. But I think there should be like a no, because like you said, the creativity from the artist's mind and perspective is what we are going to the movies for, is what we're listening to the songs for, is what we're going to see art in museums for, is like that particular artist or group of artists making something that they want to share with us. We're not going to see a computer generated version of it. So I think there needs to be like a just almost like a zero tolerance AI thing when it comes to art, when it comes to movies specifically, which is what we're talking about. But until we get there, it's kind of a gray area with certain things like this. I don't want AI in any facet in the movies, but I think we're being naive if we think that low budget productions that have the ability to cut corners because they're within the parameters that they've been given are not going to do that. I mean, this is a movie that's going to be on Shudder. It's a little more high profile. It has David Dastmalchian in it. He's a pretty popular actor. It's gotten a lot of great reviews and buzz. So there's kind of a spotlight on it right now, but I just hope that it kind of fixes this problem going forward. I think we need to kind of put an X on the AI going forward. Have a
You're
couple.
telling me the guy that was Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad is a really big
Yeah,
actor?
yeah. Well, he's good in this movie, dude. He killed it in
I
this.
mean,
He was really
he
good.
might be good in it, but ain't nobody turning out to a theater to see a David Dastmalchian joint.
What, are you kidding me? The Dark Knight, the first Dune. He was in
Okay,
Oppenheimer last year.
him being in those movies does not like
Yeah, dude.
no,
Dallas
no,
March. All
no.
right, I got some fun ones for you here after the deep discussion there. So let me see. Let me pull this up here, buddy. So Christopher McDonald, who plays Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore, was
I eat
interviewed.
pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
Yeah,
You eat pieces
was
of shit for
interviewed.
breakfast?
Was interviewed when leaving a restaurant the other night, and they asked him about his role in Happy Gilmore or whatever, and he said something to the effect of, I'm reading the quote here. He said, "You know what? I saw Adam about 2 weeks ago, and he says to me, 'McDonald, you're going to love this.' And I said, 'What?' And he showed me something, and it was the first draft of Happy Gilmore 2. And he said, 'Maybe you should cut that out because I don't want to be a liar.' But he did show it to me, and I thought, well, that would be awesome. It's in the works. Fans demand it." That's what McDonald said when being interviewed about a sequel for Happy Gilmore. How excited does this make you? Or let me rephrase this. Do you care?
I mean, I'll see it because
Yeah, you
I
care
love
about
Happy
this one.
Gilmore.
Did I
I
hit it?
love
Did I find something you care about? I
I
found it.
haven't. I saying I care about it is a stretch. Okay,
All
I'll
right,
see
okay.
it. It's not like I worship at the altar of the original movie. Here's the problem: is this kind of movie, unfortunately, when it's revisiting this sort of thing, it's gonna be rife with nostalgia, and it's probably not gonna do anything like new and unique on its own. He's gonna fight a celebrity. Okay, he's gonna
Mm.
fight a celebrity. Shooter McGavin's gonna be Shooter McGavin. You're gonna get Ben Stiller, the creepy dude at the old
Steve
folks home,
Buscemi will
back
be
as
there.
some
Yeah.
other character. Yeah, Steve Buscemi will be there.
Mm.
All the Adam Sandler folks will be there because they all need to go on vacation and get paid and stuff like that. It'll just be it'll be a pointless exercise in nostalgia that we don't need. It probably won't be very good, but I'll probably still see it anyway, just
Well,
because I love
I
the
know when
original.
I know when we talked about Spaceman a few weeks ago, you obviously a fan of his comedy, so I thought this one would get you. So
Yeah, I love Happy Gilmore. I mean, Happy Gilmore is a great movie, but what do you do with a Happy Gilmore sequel? Unless, and it'll never happen because, especially movies like this, they only do this to cash in on nostalgia hardcore.
yeah.
Like, where do you go with it? Where, especially at this point, this many years later, like, where do you go with it? Is he going to fight Drew Carey now because Drew Carey is the new host of The Price is Right?
I actually thought about that.
Like I said, I guarantee
Yeah.
it. They're going to play all those old things. They're going to probably get, because Carl Weathers is dead, so they're going to get a different golf person who has a prosthetic limb that's also going to get eaten or something like that. It's just like,
So it'll be
seriously,
a rehash.
it probably. I don't have any faith that it's going to be anything but a rehash, but I'll still watch it.
How about this one? Aaron Taylor Johnson is rumored to be the next James Bond 007. How do you feel about that casting choice? Do you know who this is, first of all?
Kick-Ass.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. He was also in Bullet Train last year with Brad Pitt. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, he was great in that. Tenet, which I hated, but he was in that. What do you think? I think makes sense. I kind of wanted to see Idris Elba in this role, and he had been rumored for a long
Elba's
time.
way too old. Like, I don't understand
You
why
think?
people keep beating this drum. He's like in his 50s.
I mean, is he older than Daniel Craig though? I mean,
But
I
here's
don't know.
the thing. They just went through this old legacy Bond type thing where Bond is already like old, on his way out, past his prime, and coming back in and whatever. If you cast Idris Elba in this, it's just going to be the same thing. Now, I love Idris Elba. 20 years ago, been absolute perfect badass Bond. Dude was like 50
I
something
don't know.
now.
I think he would do
He's
good,
in his
man.
50s.
You could give him like 2 or
No,
3 of them. I
he's in
mean,
his
that would be over
no,
a
he's
5-year
in his
period. He'd be
50s
fine.
now.
Some other actors that were rumored to be considered for it were Cillian Murphy, obviously coming off Oppenheimer.
I do not see that at all.
Henry Cavill, I know you like that one. Tom Hardy. But it
Cavill
looks like
would almost be like a token choice for it at this point because he's always wanted to play the character and he's played so many variations of spies in different spy movies
yeah.
that it would
I mean,
almost
he's Argyle
be God. It would almost just be like too much of a token casting or something to pick Cavill.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I necessarily even feel about the Cavill choice, but no, like people got to stop with it. Paul's the same way. Paul from
I
the Countdown. I love you.
disagree.
I love you. But Idris Elba's like in his 50s.
I
Like
doubt it.
it's
Let
not
me
happening.
figure out how old he is.
It's not happening. Like, dude, he's not a spring chicken. Okay, he's up there.
He can't be any older than Daniel Craig. I don't think.
I'm not saying he's older than Daniel Craig, but here's the thing: you're restarting the franchise, or you're doing whatever else. Like you already had all the Daniel Craig movies.
Dude,
were
he
about...
was born in 1972. So what's that?
Yeah, so
52?
he's 52.
Perfect.
Yeah, he's 52. Like I said, all the Daniel Craig Bond movies were all about a Bond that's like out of the agency, and then they bring him back, and he's the old guy. Like if you bring in Idris Elba, that's immediately what the new ones are going to be, and they already just did that.
Hey, coming getting ready for our review here. What about Gyllenhaal? Gyllenhaal could do it.
Gyllenhaal's too old too.
Nah, did you see him in this movie?
He's still old. Doesn't mean he's not old.
I just want to see more hot Gyllenhaal fighting.
My
I don't know
God.
what that says, but. So anyway, it looks like Aaron Taylor Johnson's going to be in the role.
I mean,
all right,
in terms of that casting, fine, fine,
yeah,
whatever.
It's good. I'm
not a Bond person. I don't really care. I'm not a Bond person. So
now we're back from semi-care with Happy Gilmore to you don't care again. All right, well, how about this? Although I know you won't care about it, I just want to see your face. The highest bidder for the door that Rose was floating on in the Titanic in the last act of the Titanic after the ship sank, Kate Winslet, beautiful Kate Winslet, paid over $700,000 for that door at auction this past week. By the way, can you guess what the highest piece of Hollywood memorabilia prior to that, most expensive, was bid on? Which was $525,000.
No.
It was the bullwhip from Indiana Jones.
Okay.
Went for $500,000. So what do you think, man? $718,000 and $750 for the door
for a chunk of wood.
Yeah, how you feel about that? You going to get that, put it up in the podcast space, or what do you think? Hey, I'll never let go if you do. I will never let go.
I got like.
Do you care?
I gotta work. I gotta work paycheck to paycheck here. Okay, I don't really like. I live a more comfortable life than a lot of people do, but I don't have frivolous money to go out and blow on dumb nonsense. Like,
can I ask you this?
Hunk of wood for $750,000.
Can I ask you this?
Get some perspective, people, please, for the love of God.
Can I ask you this?
No.
If you and I went down together on the Titanic, all right, and we were there with the door, all right, and you're floating on the door, all right, would you save me and pull me up and spoon me on the door with you, or am I Jack and I'm just floating down to the nothingness of the cold Atlantic Sea?
I'd get in the water with you because I couldn't live without you. Like I'm jumping in there with you. Neither one of us is getting the door. We're just gonna shove the door away.
Yeah. Oh man, my heart will go on, brother. All right. One big question time, Nick. We're getting ready to get into our discussion of Roadhouse, starring Mr. Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor. Am I right? But before we get there, we like to start every review out by seeing what the fans had to ask us over on social media, and one big question.
You gotta ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
All righty, Nick. Did you find a question that we can discuss here?
I found a good question just for you.
Oh,
Gerald, our very own executive producer, Dan, our editor, Dan, we love you.
Yeah.
Wants to know specifically for you. He did not ask me this question because you already know my answer.
Mm-hmm.
Better actor between Swayze and Gyllenhaal.
All right. Well, I saw this one because I peeked the other day to see what was coming in.
How dare you?
And I don't normally do that, but when I saw this is a bit of a brain teaser for me. All right, because nostalgia. Okay, Gerald, born in 75, an 80s and 90s kid. Nostalgia for me is Swayze, all right? I can just think of that guy in practically anything he was in, and it's just like, I'm just taken back. But I cannot, with a straight face, tell you that he's a better actor than Jake Gyllenhaal. I think Gyllenhaal is probably one of the best of our lifetimes, honestly. I think that he should have been nominated for an Academy Award for Nightcrawler, and frankly, he could have won it, and I would have been completely fine with that. I thought he was just on another level in that movie, and even with the action stuff, like we're going to talk about tonight, and when he does the romantic comedy stuff, I mean, he has range, is what I'm saying, but also he's just so charismatic and charming and magnetic, and I love the dude. Now, I love Swayze too, but it's like for different reasons, and it's not his acting ability. So I think to answer Dan's question, I think the easy answer is Gyllenhaal. I'm assuming that's your answer as well.
Do you
I know
know?
you're a
Do you
big
know why?
Swayze
Do you know
fan,
why
but
it's not because of Swayze's acting ability? Yeah, because he had none, literally none.
all
One
right.
of the most
Well,
talentless people ever to grace the silver screen,
all
literally
righty.
ever.
Hang tight there. Hang
Absolutely
tight.
terrible.
Well, then I can ask you our buddy Jared Taylor's question over on Facebook. Then he wants to
Ooh.
know if you brought your Swayze on a stick for this review.
I think I lost it in the move to Ithaca. I used to have it. Justin gave this to me. So there's a
Man,
funny Roadhouse story that I could tell during our
sure.
review or whenever, but it was
Yeah.
for my bachelor party
Mm-hmm.
where Justin was determined to force me to watch the original Roadhouse.
Goddamn
And
right.
we were halfway through the movie and the power went out and we all decided to go to the strip club instead. But when Justin brought when Justin came to my bachelor party, he brought a Patrick Swayze head on a stick because he knows how much I detest Patrick Swayze, and he made me carry it around the entire bachelor weekend.
Interesting.
Much to my chagrin. I had that thing for years. I don't, like I said, I'm pretty sure I lost
I
it in the
remember you
move.
had it. I remember you had it on a couple live streams after that too.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I had
was
it for
a
a
while.
long time, for many years, and I think it was just getting old and kind of tattered and ratty. I was getting worn out because I was cuddling with it all the time. You know how it is. So I just had to
Right.
get rid of it and
Right.
everything.
All right. So we're going to get into our discussion of Roadhouse, the 2024 remake of the 80s cult classic. Am I right? But before we get there, we're going to give you our individual scores out of 10. We have not discussed it with each other yet, and then we will talk about it in the review. It is what we call the early score reveal.
Damn it, this always happens. I think I'm gonna score and then I never score. It's not fair.
Now, I fully expect, Nicholas, that this will be a heated argument this evening. I don't know if it'll be a full-out brawl like we see in some of the scenes in this movie, but I'm here to do my part. So I'm going to count us in, buddy. You ready?
Do it to it.
Here we go. Roadhouse out of 10. 3, 2, 1.
Oof.
7 out of 10. What do you got? A 7 out of 10, and Nick's giving it a 10 out of 10. I can't believe that.
No.
Wow.
We're calling this the other version of this card. It's a 1. This gets a 1. I
This is
hated
unbelievable.
this
You
so
are.
much.
This is really sad to me.
This
Have
is
fun,
unequivocally.
sir.
This is unequivocally one
is-
of the worst things I have ever seen in my
it ca-
life. Doug
That's not possible.
Lyman threatening to sue Amazon because they wouldn't distribute this theatrically should be ashamed of himself, because there's no reason that any eye should ever have to bear witness to this atrocity.
I loved this thing. Dude.
Wow.
I had so much
God in heaven.
dumb fun with this movie.
Wow.
Dude, you're wrong. What did you give the first Roadhouse, or what would you give it?
Probably
said
a 1, because I hate Patrick Swayze and it's also a terrible movie.
All right. Well, look, the thing that the original Roadhouse that you could say with a straight face is that's a bad movie, but it's one of those movies that just endures over time and kind of wins the hearts of people and kind of becomes a cult classic or whatever.
Yeah, and it's
With
it's like got that kind of cult following now because people know it's a bad movie, but they still
Right.
love it anyway.
Right.
You know
With
what this feels
movie-
like? This felt like Doug Lyman was trying to make a bad movie, and it shows on the screen. I'm sorry, this was so bad.
No,
I
he
hated
was
this
trying
so
to.
much.
He was trying to be true to the personality of the original, and I think where this one fell short, honestly, and I would have liked it more, is when it tried to get too serious with some of the side plots and side characters, and not kind of leaning into, the kind of absurdity of the plot, which is really essentially the same plot as the original with some minor things changed, drugs and whatever. But I mean, generally speaking, it's the same kind of setup and foundation as we got in the original. And then obviously Dalton, his lead character, is also the same. But aside from those things, it's pretty different than the original. I think thematically too, like kind of like what we already said, it just plays on as a much more like polished production, in my opinion, where you can't. Well, obviously you can, but I can't look at it and go, "Man, this is a terrible movie." I just enjoy it. For me, I think I enjoy it, but I think it's a decent movie too. I mean, it's not going to win Academy Awards. It's not going to, break streaming records or anything. But by the way, this is spoiler free. Like Nick said a second ago, when we get to the promo and stuff, we'll let you guys know when we get into spoilers for Roadhouse. It's currently streaming on Prime. But with this movie, Nick, I'll just say that we already talked about Gyllenhaal and his charisma, which I think he was completely devoted to this role, which I did not expect. I expected to see kind of a phoned in Gyllenhaal here taking a paycheck. But I just thought he was so funny and charming, and his character was kind of intriguing, like his backstory and kind of wondering, and they would show those flashbacks of him in the UFC, and we find out some things and some tragedies that occurred that kind of, turned him into this loner or whatever. But I was really connected to him, to Dalton. Like, I really wanted to see where it went for him, and I think that's what made it a good movie for me. But also, everybody is ripping Conor McGregor to shreds in terms of like his acting in this film. And believe me, it's not good. Okay. He's not a good actor. He's not on the level of like John Cena or The Rock or, none of that stuff. But he was so invested in being the ham in this movie. I mean, just that stupid shit-eating grin he had the whole time. That walk where he's like walking like a, muscular frat dude from the 90s, He was just so bought into this kind of over-the-top crazy character that he played of Knox in the movie. And I just found it hilarious. Like, every time he was on screen smiling or naked or whatever, and just literally looked like he was enjoying beating these guys to death with his bare hands, was just like hilarious to me. And I mean, we'll get on the other side of spoilers and stuff. We'll talk about some of the fight scenes and the action sequences and the choreography and that kind of stuff too. But I thought a lot of that stuff was really well done as well. And I think you need to like have fun, man. Like, this is a fucking good like time, brother. Like, I don't understand how. I mean, if you say it's a bad movie, that's fine. But like, I just don't understand how you didn't enjoy at least parts of this. No scenes for you were like, this is pretty cool.
No, the tone is really, really uneven. Gyllenhaal's performance is really, really uneven. I didn't dislike his character at first. I loved how he was kind of like really nonchalant about just beating up like the intro goons, like the first goons that show up at the bar and things like that. Like, he just immediately is just like pop or whatever, like, and all that kind of stuff, and like making the jokes and stuff like that with them. But then that character goes on this weird roller coaster of like, he's so different tonally, but that's like really this entire movie. It doesn't know what it wants to be tonally. It plays itself way too seriously at times. It takes itself way too seriously at times.
I agree with that.
But then you have Conor McGregor, who is abysmal. He's so bad in this.
Not good.
But he's chewing scenery. Like, he's so far over the top, but it's so far out of step with the other stuff that's in this movie that he stands out. It's in a bad way. Like, you can go over the top and be super hammy, but still make it work because like the film is a little bit tongue in cheek, but you just have like that one outlier. He's stratospherically above everything else in this movie. If the entire movie was like him and he was just another piece of that puzzle, dude, I would have loved this ride.
I agree with that.
If it was so ridiculously over the top in every sense like him, I would have been right there with you. But like I said, it's so tonally all over the place. Baffling shots during fight sequences and other sequences where the footage is sped up for some reason. Absolutely no idea why that was done or anything like that. None of the other characters in this film are even remotely entertaining whatsoever. They are like smoke in the wind. Like, they're so thin. There's absolutely nothing redeeming about them. And then like every time in the fight sequences, I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more detail on them when we get a little bit further into the review, but just again, baffling choices that were made to obscure cuts or to obscure the footage. It's meant to kind of like it's trying to put you in a first person perspective where it's trying to disorient you, the viewer. But listen,
Mhm.
like this was the same thing. What did we watch recently where it did the same kind of thing where it
Argyle.
was it Argyle where
I think so, yeah.
but where it completely changed because it wanted to put us into that perspective of the person, but then it was just trying to mask bad fight choreography and things like that. And like it's not that this movie didn't have decent fight choreography when it actually stuck to it and just let Gyllenhaal and McGregor go to town, but then it would cut to a shot where it was like half of the screen was like whited out and like blurry because you're meant to be in Gyllenhaal's perspective and he's like on the ground like or whatever. Like, I'm sorry, but
Mhm.
that's not entertaining. Like all you're doing is trying to obscure it for me and everything. Like I hated
I
this
liked it a lot,
so
guys.
bad.
Now, who you gonna go with here? You gonna go with the bald bearded one that has a sex cult, or are you gonna go with the guy that hates Swayze? Let's do this, Nick. Let's get ready to get into spoilers. But as you said before, let's cut to producer Dan. He's got a few words he's going to roll for you, and then when we come back, we will be in the spoiler zone. So we'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. You are on the spoiler side of the discussion for Roadhouse. Going forward, anything we talk about with this movie that is comfortably sitting at a 7 out of 10, correct, Nick? Will be spoilery, so just be warned. Nick, some of the fights in this movie, you touched on the opening one, right? And that's when he first gets to the Roadhouse and that group, he kind of gets them outside because he threatens their motorcycles. And he starts asking them, like, do you have insurance? And he kind of taunting them a little bit. And he basically just slaps them all silly and beats him senseless. And then he decides to borrow her car and take them all to the hospital. And I just love, okay, let me just say this. The script is not good. This is a bad screenplay, okay? But when you take a mediocre screenplay like this and you give it to somebody like Jake Gyllenhaal, and he kind of elevates it because of his presence, which I think is what happened here. And that scene in the van when he's driving them to the hospital, and he says, "There's a bump coming up," and they're all just like hurting in the back, and these are the dudes that he just beat their ass. I don't know, just the imagery of that shot, it's just hilarious to me. Like I said, I just had so much fun with this movie, and I genuinely feel bad for you that you didn't enjoy this, man.
That's like the
I
first
think if
10
we had watched it
minutes.
together.
It's like the first 10 minutes of the movie you're talking about. I was on board with it at that point because it was tonally even. It was going for a very kind of jokey, tongue-in-cheek sort of thing. Like you had the one talkative goon who was like super talkative the whole time.
Yeah.
And Gyllenhaal sitting there cracking jokes. And yeah, all that stuff was fine. Like I didn't dislike any of that stuff at all. I was on board. I went into this movie very skeptical. That's definitely no secret. I really, really disliked the first movie. I really didn't think that there was any chance that this was going to be good. But then you're right after that point, and that's to skip over again. There's weird. That was Post Malone, right? In the opening of the movie.
Malone in the
So you got
beginning.
Post Malone as like this weird back alley cage fighter or something like that. But then they're doing this weird thing where Lyman's speeding up all the footage in different shots, like in different fight sequences in this movie. It happens during the truck crash when they try to run him over too. It happens a couple different times in other different fight sequences. It's not like all of it, but it's definitely very noticeably like it's sped up, like almost in a cartoonish sort of way, which is ridiculous.
Well, what I'll say to you is that you're a Snyder stan, and he slows everything down. So maybe Lyman just wants to speed it up a little bit.
Good Lord.
I mean, I hate when Snyder slows everything down, but I mean, you're on board for that,
Not every time.
It's just an artistic choice. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a fan of it necessarily, but I think that's just like a style of filmmaking.
It plays like Benny Hill. It plays like really, really weird because it wasn't like sped up a little bit. It was very noticeably sped up where it was like, I don't even really know how to describe it, but you literally have to watch it. It's very, very literally just sped up footage. But right after the scene you're talking about, he gets the goons to the hospital and like drops them off. And then that's where it falls off of a cliff for me. Literally from there forward, it just kind of just like just
But
completely
I think
nosedives.
but I think Dalton stays true to himself throughout most of the movie though. Like he has other um interactions like that. Like I mean, really all the comedy in this movie I love aside from Conor McGregor's just fucking batshit weird performance, which may or may not have been intentionally funny. I don't know, but I thought it was hilarious. But aside from that, like all the comedic aspects and comic relief in this film for me came from Gyllenhaal, which is kind of funny to think about. But
I
he has
really
that
want to
one.
see the movie that Conor McGregor thought he was in. I
Yeah,
want to see that movie because
yeah, yeah.
that movie, if every element of this
He
movie
was in.
was wildly over the top like that and ridiculous, I'd have been on board. But like I'm sorry, but like the whole backstory that they very, 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 very briefly touch on with him being a UFC fighter who killed his opponent slash friend,
Hmm.
some weird thing like that. But
Hmm.
it's so throwaway, like it's so pointless as to not even like he doesn't even really, honest to god, you could have just made him a drifter. He didn't need to be anybody before this because it doesn't really mean anything to the film itself what his background is or what happened to him in the past. If they had spent some time with him dramatically of him trying to like escape his demons, but you only really get the very, very brief opening sequence where they won't even fight him. Post Malone won't even fight him, and then he like tries to kill himself. Like that's literally the only character development you get from his character the entire film is when he like tries to drive into the train or whatever
Yeah.
at the very, very beginning of the movie. That's literally like the only character development he
Well,
gets.
he thought about it and then
Like, I'm
he
sorry, but
tried
that's
to
that's
escape.
not that's not enough for me. Like if you want his haunted backstory of him being this UFC fighter who killed his
Well, that
opponent, like to be this kind of continual thing that haunts him, like
right.
again, this is where the tonal inconsistencies come into
Yeah.
play. Pick a lane, either give us those dramatic touches, or like I said, just make him a drifter who wanders in there and just
Well,
like
that's also where
is
I
good.
detach. That's also where I detach from this movie too, and that's what I was kind of talking about when I gave my initial score. Is that it would have been much better if they didn't try to make it serious and dramatic as they did with stuff like that with this
It does not need
backstory
those beats at all.
and even the relationship with Charlie and her dad, which I mean I did find touching, but it was obviously kind of sprinkled throughout the movie, like for that revenge arc at the end of the film because of what happens at the bookstore. And I did love that version of Dalton when he kind of snapped. He was about to leave town and found out that they did that to send him a message. And then he's just kind of a switch went off. And, you know, he even has that monologue with that one dude that he kills in the pool when he's like, you know, they keep asking me if I'm afraid. And I am afraid of what happens when I get angry, basically. I can't remember if that's what he says, but something I'm paraphrasing.
It's
And
something
then
to that effect, yeah.
yeah, and then he kind of goes on a killing spree. Um,
Can
and
I
it
just say
culminates in,
that sequence is the most ridiculous sequence in the movie because that dude is in a pool of waist deep water. Dalton hits him in the throat. He falls into the pool, and then like he's thrashing about in the pool. Nobody's in the pool holding him down or anything like that. Again, this is like waist deep water, and then it cuts to a shot of him just dead in the
yeah.
pool. Like it just straight up cuts to a shot of him dead in the pool.
He said when he did the throat thing that he wasn't going to be able to breathe or whatever. He's going to struggle to breathe. So I guess that was him struggling, and he eventually died because he couldn't breathe.
Sure.
I mean, he mentioned. I mean,
Cool
Gyllenhaal
beans.
mentioned what
Cool
he
beans.
monologuing what he was doing there.
But then see, like the film tries to kind of he becomes more comedic again as he goes into like when they go to the boat at the end or even before that when he's like taunting the cop and all these different things about like what a
Yeah.
concussion is and like going to the boat, but that's the Dalton from like the first 5 to 10 minutes of this movie. But that Dalton outside of those opening scenes, you don't really see that character again until the third act. And like for me, that's where the detachment is. It's like, why isn't that character
It,
that way the whole time?
it is up and down. I mean, am not arguing with you at all, and that's why this is a 7 instead of an 8 or 9 for me because I love this thing, but tonally it was just all over the place for me too. I agree with you. I wish it had been kind of like the first movie, but with everything, all the components that we had here. So, like, if you have this movie that we're talking about, and you take away the backstory with the UFC because we don't really need it, You take away
Because in the original, he didn't really have a
sentimental.
backstory, right?
No,
Yeah.
he didn't. He was just kind of a figure that everybody knew as a badass or whatever. You take away like the love story because we don't really need that. I mean, it turns out to be the sheriff's daughter, and that's like a plot twist or whatever. But, I mean, I mean, you don't really need it.
Which that part
You,
was cute on the boat when he's like, "Ooh, plot twist," and then he's like, "Ooh, another plot twist," or
yeah,
like double cross
that
or
was
whatever.
self-aware. Yeah,
Whatever
that
he
was
says, like, yeah,
self-aware.
I love those kind of meta moments, but by then it was too little, too late. Like it could not save it for me by that point.
But my thing with this, I mean, we're getting ready to wrap up. We can give our final thoughts on it. But my thing with this is that I do wish I could have seen this in a theater. To Doug Lyman's point,
You'd have been the only one.
I think that this is a fun, like dumb action movie that lends homage to like the old 90s action movies, that not even going all the way back to the original Roadhouse, but like old 90s shit like Con Air, and just like over the top, unrealistic, crazy shit with crazy villains. And Conor McGregor's just this big dumb idiot in this movie, and he knows it. And he's just, I mean, the first scene we see him, he's completely naked walking through like this center square or whatever, and he like blows up the fucking flea market when he takes this dude's clothes off his back. And I mean, it's just, I just wish it had been that consistently, or at least the majority of the film throughout. But I got a real nostalgic feel with this movie. Like, it felt very like 90s action movie to me, in like what we would say is a bad action movie from the 90s. Do you know what I mean? But I just enjoyed it so much. So my score of a 7 is not like I think this is a great movie. I just think it's a lot of fun. Like, I just had such a blast with this film. And I think Gyllenhaal's performance, like I said, I was surprised he was as committed to this as he was. It was a pleasant surprise to see him really turn in something great here. And I think Conor McGregor being as bad as he was, whether that was intentional or not, really helped me with this movie too, because every time he was on screen, it was fucking hilarious. Like, I was like, I don't know if he's trying to make me laugh, but he is so not good and so funny in these scenes. That he has that one scene where he fucking shows up thinking he's about to party. He's like, where the fuck is everyone? And his line delivery is horrible. Like, he's reading it off a cue card. But it's just so funny. And then I've already mentioned the comedic wit and timing of Gyllenhaal in this movie. I thought was great. I could have done without some of the camera tactics that you mentioned, and there seemed to be a lot of CGI and shit with the boat scene and the truck going into the roadhouse. And I mean, but I guess what are you gonna do, So, but all in all, I think if you like action movies, I mean, it's streaming at home if you have Prime. My opinion is give it a shot. I thought it was a freaking blast, so I'm recommending this one. It's actually one of my favorite movies I've seen so far this year, Nick. I really like this thing a lot. I can't wait for your fan mail, guys. What do you think, Nick? Wrap up on it.
You mentioned in there the phrase like it's a dumb bad action movie, or I'm paraphrasing you. It's, and that's, I think my problem is I think it's trying to be. I think it's trying to be. I think you've mentioned this with other movies that we've watched, and here's the thing: you can't intentionally make a cult classic. You can't intentionally try to make a bad, cheesy movie and have it come off like good, because it's going to show through the pores of it in every single place. And that's what I really feel like in this. I feel like they wanted to make a dumb movie, and there was no earnestness to it. Like, whatever little tiny flashes of it are good. Gyllenhaal's not terrible, but he's just really uneven. The script just takes him all over the map. Conor McGregor is horrible. He's in a completely different movie, literally in a completely different movie. And the villain, we haven't even mentioned the villain, Billy Magnuson. I know I've seen him in other stuff, but he's terrible, unbelievably bad. Like, he's not threatening literally in the least bit. Like, and none of his goons are either. Like, a lot of these types of movies, like, it's not necessarily the main baddie that's threatening or anything like that. It's more so their goons or whatever. But even still, him as a villain, he doesn't do anything menacing at all. Like, he literally doesn't do anything menacing. He just
He just yells
like
and
gets he's just annoying, and so it's just I'm sorry, I hated this. I hated this. All the secondary characters are just bad.
mm,
They're
mm.
laughably bad. Like I said, I really want to see the movie that this was in Conor McGregor's head. I would
That
love
would
to
be interesting.
see whatever Roadhouse movie he thought he was co-starring in, because that movie's probably a ride, like an absolute
That
ride. Like, imagine this movie cranked up to the like 15 that he's cranked up to in this.
yeah,
The whole, like, it would have been this glorious whatever, this bunch of whatever. I don't even know what else
that
you
would.
do to it. Like maybe like they blow up the whole island that the Roadhouse is on or something like that. Like whatever kind of crazy stuff. Like have Dalton taken on like 100 ninjas. Like throw all sorts of ridiculousness at this. Like if you want it to get bad, really get in there. Like you can make
I
an
did.
entertaining movie that's not well made. Like that's not like that's I see where you're approaching it from in terms of scoring it like that, but for me it was just so uneven. It was just so bad. I just hated this so much.
I did think it was kind of ridiculously funny at the end when we get that like climactic battle between him and Conor McGregor in the actual Roadhouse, and McGregor Knox drives the truck through the fucking front door, and they end up just having this like 10-minute brawl basically, and fucking destroy the place. And I did just find that bit of like ironically funny that like Dalton came there to kind of save this place, and ultimately he's the one that fucking blew it to smithereens by trying to protect it.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of ridiculous or whatever. And then it was kind of cheesy because Jessica or whatever her name is, they come in and start cleaning the place up, and these dudes are like, "Are you guys open?" And it's kind of like a happy ending or whatever. What did you think about the mid-credit scene with Knox there in the hospital? Did you stick around for that?
I saw it. Yeah.
Good times.
I
Just doing his strut out of the hospital with the gown. So it was bookended by his character was bookended the same way, So he's on his way to steal clothes off of some dude, and hey, it set it up for a sequel, man.
Oh, please. Joy of joys.
Yeah, dude. All right, so a 7 for me. Yes, a 7. I don't understand the vitriol for this film. It is a good, dumb time. And a 1 from Nick. So that makes this a 4 out of 10 from the P's on Roadhouse, which is probably the lowest rated movie of the year so far for us.
No, we had what was last week?
Last week was Love Lies Bleeding, but
oh no, not last week. There was something else, right?
Let's see.
I don't know.
So let's see. Yeah, I guess you're right because no, because Spaceman would have been.
Spaceman was 3.5. I thought
so that was 4.5.
That was 4.5.
Yeah, 4.5 on that one.
What did I rate Spaceman?
Argyle would have been worse. Argyle was a 3.5. So as of right now, I think Argyle is the lowest reviewed or rated film from us. Which probably, right? Roadhouse is come on, dude. Roadhouse is a more enjoyable watch than Argyle.
I'd rather have my fingernails pulled off than watch either one of them ever again. They're both terrible. They're both so bad.
I need somebody to come to my aid here because I don't think anybody liked it.
Winners, I guarantee you watch this and probably was hooting and hollering.
Well, he may have hated it because he loved the original, and it's not necessarily true to the original. I think it is in parts, and that's kind of where it lost me because it would be, and then it wouldn't be.
The original's like paper thin, though. Like, what's there to the original? He's a bouncer at a bar, and he runs afoul of like these real estate developers, and he continues taking out more and more of their goons, and then they have a final showdown. Like it's the same basic plot structure. Yeah, it doesn't have Conor McGregor running around in it, but it's whatever. Honest to God, like if you would have stuck to that tone, like you mentioned films like Con Air and all those big dub 90s action movies, but you know what they did? They stuck to the tone. They stayed consistent within like their own things. That's why they're much, much better movies. Don't you ever mention this trash in the same breath as Con Air ever again?
I mean, I agree with
Put the
what you're
bunny
saying. I guess I'm just more
back
forgiving about it, but I
in
agree
the
with you.
box.
Put the bunny in the box. All right, so a 4 out of 10 cumulatively on.
It should be lower. Can I rate it like a negative? Can I rate it -7 so it tallies out at 0?
I should have gone up higher, I guess. But all right, well, whatever. Actually, I got to be honest with you. I can't wait to watch this thing again.
I wish they would have put this out in theaters and it would have bombed horribly.
Nah, I would've seen it
Absolutely
10 times already.
horribly. Amazon saw this garbage. They saw the writing on the wall.
All right, look, we're getting together next week, Nick. I'm going to see Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire tomorrow, and I know you already saw
How is
it.
it I've
so by the
already
time-
seen this and you haven't even seen it yet?
I'm taking my kid to see it. This is spring break this week, so we're going to a matinee tomorrow to check it out. But yeah, so we'll both be ready to discuss the new Ghostbusters. I muted the hashtag on Twitter, so I've been trying to avoid as much chatter about it as I can.
I want to spoil one thing for you about it. Ready? Are you ready?
No.
I'm gonna spoil one thing. I'm going to spoil one thing. Ready? There's ghosts in it.
Oh, okay.
Boom.
Wow. I wish you hadn't told me that. I didn't know if Frozen Empire. I didn't know. I don't know.
Now
Yeah, I thought
you
maybe
don't know
it
how to
was
even prepare for
Yetis
the
or
movie,
whatever.
right? Yeah, you don't even know. Yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm sorry.
I saw Slimer in the trailer, so I guess it's not too much of a spoiler. But anyway, we will get together next week and we will talk about the new Ghostbusters. I'm looking forward to that. I know you're a big fan of this franchise, so hope that turns out to be a much more amicable discussion next week, Nicholas. But until then, man, I love you and thank you to everyone for tuning in to our discussion of Roadhouse. Nick, why don't you send the folks off with your adios there, buddy? What do you want to say
we
for
love
people?
you. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Be good, be kind to yourselves, and take good care of yourselves this week. And we'll be back next week.
We'll see you guys on the flip side. Thanks for
I
tuning
am afraid of no Gerald.
I'm afraid of that graphic you put up back there. God, how did you get a picture of me with my shirt off though?
Wow.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you next week. Don't do anything with that photo. Just leave it in your private collection.
I'm gonna send it to the guy in Michigan.
He needs some new material. That's good.